Good evening. Welcome to Inside Out. I'm Pat Smith, and this is where we take you inside state, local, and federal government to bring information out to you. Helping us do that tonight is Scott Goldberg, and he serves as the chairman of the Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee. Always been a mouthful, the whole title, Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee. What is it?
Well, that's a great question. First, I want to start by saying we're Democrats, so why use 3 or 4 words when we can use 20? So the Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee has 2 main functions. First, we are the day-to-day managers of the County Democratic Party. So we are supporting our elected officials, supporting our candidates, going into neighborhoods, reaching out, and building the Democratic Party. And second, an important function is when there is a vacancy in the state legislature, it is our committee of 24's job to appoint someone to fill that vacancy either in the House of Delegates or the state Senate.
So they would fill it, whoever you appoint fills it until the next election?
Correct.
Okay. And does that selection by the Central Committee have to be approved by the governor?
That's right. So we submit a name to the governor, and to my knowledge, in recent history, any submission from Montgomery County is just rubber stamped.
Mm-hmm. Very good. I think that what people are struggling with now is belonging to a party, you know, being pledged to a political hierarchy or political boss. Mm-hmm. And they're trending toward being independent registered voters. Or even if they are Democrat or Republicans toward the middle, they're tending to vote like independents, not just right down the slate. Have you found that to be the case?
Absolutely. So the Democratic Party is definitely a Big Tent party. We accept a wide variety of viewpoints. And when we're going knocking on doors and launching canvases, we see people who have been involved for decades. And we also see a lot of people who aren't quite ready to join the Democratic Party, but after 2016 know that they want to elect Democrats, or at least get rid of Republicans, which is good enough for us. And they are getting active and warming up to the idea that the Democratic Party is going to be a welcoming home for them, and that they can be more successful in getting Democrats elected if they are more entwined with the Democratic Party.
How did the 24 of you get to be on the Central Committee?
That's a great question. So the Central Committee is one office that would be in the Democratic primary ballot. So we go to the Board of Elections, we fill out a couple pieces of paper, we submit a small filing fee, and then we run for office just like anyone else running in the Democratic primary. This year it was on June 26th. So the winners of our respective races then become members of the Democratic Central Committee. And
so is it a term that runs concurrent with the president's term? For 4 years?
It runs with the governor's term.
Oh, so the governor's term.
Correct. So the next time we'll be up for re-election is in 2022.
Right. And are you elected at large throughout the whole county, or is it broken down into districts? Or?
That's a great question. So our committee of 24, there is a male and a female that represents each of the 8 legislative districts. So that's 16. And then we have 8 more, 4 male, 4 female, at-large representatives.
And so at large, they were on the ballot countywide.
Correct.
And is there much competition for the seats on the Central Committee at an election time? Is there more than one candidate for each spot?
A lot of times, yes. Some were unopposed, but in the election that I was in for at-large, so you pick 4, and there were 9 other people running.
Oh, impressive.
Yeah, so we got to drive all the way out to Clarksville, Damascus, and of course Chevy Chase, Bethesda, Gaithersburg, Germantown, Tacoma Park.
Don't forget Poolsville.
Absolutely, Poolsville.
Now, it is, what if you're talking about the gender balance, 50-50. what if there's 3 in an at-large race or something, and the men come in first, second, third, and fourth?
So people have a lot of questions about this. So back in the 1930s, the Democratic National Committee handed out some rules that said our state parties and our local parties should have gender parity. So the way we conduct our elections is that all the men run together. So again, I was running against 9 other males in one category, and then the women run in their own. There were 6 running for 4 spots, and then the top 4 women and the top 4 men get elected.
Oh, okay. Understood. That's pretty simple. But this gender parity started way back in the 1930s.
Almost 100 years ago.
Wow, and only less than 2 decades after the right to vote was extended to women.
We were pretty progressive even back then.
Very good. The relevance of the party structure seems to have lost ground in what you actually do. Now, you said you support candidates, Democratic candidates that are in office, that you go into the neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera. What are you doing to support them?
So
Is it financial, or is it just, I support you?
So, for example, there are about 344,000 registered Democrats in Montgomery County. Those 344,000 have 212,853 mailboxes. We sent a Democratic sample ballot telling people who all their Democratic nominees are to every single one of those mailboxes. And they started arriving last Friday and are going to arrive all the way up to early voting. That cost us about $100,000. So we are raising money and we are actively supporting any candidate on our ballot.
Understood. How do you raise $100,000?
Credit card.
Is it just through individual contributions? Do you run events, or?
It is a wide array of places. So we ask for contributions from candidates themselves. We have every year a brunch and a ball. Both of those raise significant amounts of money. We have low dollar contributions. We send out weekly emails. We raise somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 a month just in low dollar contributions from our regular emails. We have mid and high level fundraising level organizations. So it comes from a very diverse pool, and it's been successful for many years.
Is the office still over here in Kensington and Farragut Avenue?
It is.
Been there forever.
Been there forever. At least through 2020.
And how do you pay the overhead of maintaining a full-time office?
So we have a full-time headquarters, as you mentioned, and we have a mostly full-time office manager. And the way we pay for that, we're fundraising on a continuous basis. So when I say we have this ball and this brunch every year, each of those raise north of 5 figures. So it costs us about $80,000 a year just to regularly operate. And then in all the campaign activities that we do, the sample ballot and various other things, we raise in excess of that.
You don't have the manpower and the structure and the boots on the ground to skip the mailing and have it delivered by hand?
So we don't like to say manpower, we like to say person power.
Person power.
Okay, because women make up a significant, definitely more than half portion of the boots on the ground. So we do the mail. Every 4 years, the campaigns come together, the state party and the local parties, and form what's called a coordinated campaign. So we have 2 offices, one in downtown Silver Spring and one in Rockville, that are working all day, every day, from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., and they are knocking on doors. And if you don't want to knock on doors, you can make phone calls. So that voter outreach statewide has, when I checked last week, it was about to go over 1 million contacts.
So you have the full-time office year-round in Kensington, but you have these Silver Spring and Rockville locations for the election season.
So our first canvass started August 4th. We launched and started knocking on doors just as the summer was ending.
Do you find your Republican counterparts on their central committee competitive with you all?
I don't want to be mean, but no. I don't see them having the level of action that we do. And that could just be a function of there are so many more Democrats in Montgomery County than there are Republicans.
What is the ratio?
So there are 344,000 registered Democrats. I believe there are somewhere between 100 and 150,000 registered Republicans, but there are actually more registered voters that are unaffiliated with any party than there are Republicans.
Okay. So it'd be about, they make up,
So if you add those two together,
it's 50%, and then the Democrats are 50%.
right, if you add those two together, you still get 50,000 more registered Democrats than unaffiliateds and Republicans.
But it's very interesting because we have so few Republicans that get elected to any office in any district here. But that's why the governor's race is very important to the Democratic Party, I would think, this year, because of the redistricting that comes out in 2020.
Yep. So Governor Hogan promised to have nonpartisan redistricting, and hopefully he lives up to that.
Well, it isn't just up to Governor Hogan. The legislature's involved and the central committee's involved.
So the Montgomery County Democratic Party has a function in appointing members to the county level redistricting.
Okay.
So every 10 years they look at the map, and this committee draws a new map for the 5 councilmanic districts. There's actually a ballot question that people will decide on this year to change the makeup and take out the central committees from that process and give it entirely to the county council.
What's your position on that?
That's a great question. So our precinct officials, which number about 500, get together whenever there are ballot questions and have a really informative discussion and decide what position the party should take. And this year they decided to have no position on it. So that's where we stand.
Okay, understood. Time for us to take a quick break. We'll be right back. I'm Pat Smith. You're watching Inside Out. And I have with me Scott Goldberg. He's the chair of the Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee. We'll be right back.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made home ownership happen. Homeschooling yourself on loans, beefing up your credit score.
So I'm pre-approved.
You were like, yes! Sorry. Color-coding listings, ticking boxes, and flushing every toilet in a 20-mile radius. Home sweet home. You aced house hunting. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
Welcome back. I'm Pat Smith. You're watching Inside Out, where we take you inside state, local, and federal government to bring information out to you. Helping me do that this evening is Scott Goldberg. He's the chairman of the chairperson of the Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee. Now, Scott, there's a pecking order here, isn't there? There's the county organizations, then there's a state organization, and then the national organization, correct?
That's right.
Could you tell our viewers about that structure and how that is formed?
Absolutely. So on the county level, we have our Montgomery County Democratic Party, and all the other 24 jurisdictions throughout the state have their local parties as well. And together, we make up the Maryland Democratic State Central Committee, which is sort of like a much larger board of directors for the Maryland Democratic Party, which operates the day-to-day operations of the state party.
But the state party has a full-time office now?
It does in Annapolis, and they are doing outreach and doing campaign things all day, every day.
Okay. And the chair of the State Democratic Committee is whom?
So it is nice that she is from Montgomery County. The chair is Kathleen Matthews.
That'd be the infamous Chris Matthews' spouse.
Well, we don't think he's infamous, but yes.
All right. You have a contested election, as we have this year here in the county for county executive, where a Democrat is nominated by the primary process, and that is Marc Elrich. And now Nancy Florine got the signatures necessary to be able to run as a Democrat, as an independent. But everybody knows she's been a Democrat all her life, and she served on the council for 16 years or something as a Democrat.
Sure.
Where does the Central Committee then lie?
So I just want to clear up one thing.
Sure.
So you say independent, and a lot of other people and news outlets say independent too. I just want to be clear that there is an actual independent party. And so we refer to candidates that are not members of a party, as does the Board of Elections, and on the ballot as unaffiliated. So,
Okay.
so we refer to people, the members that are not people of a party, unaffiliated. So we had a Democratic primary. The Democratic Party asked registered Democrats to come out and vote in June and help us select who's going to be our standard bearer for the county executive office. Marc Elrich, by a giant margin of 77 votes, won that. But regardless, he won it by one vote or more, so he is our nominee. The 24 members of our Central Committee are 100% supporting him. We hope he wins. We were quite frankly upset that Ms. Florine decided to get into this race. It cost her nearly $200,000 just to get the signatures necessary. And then almost immediately out of the gate, both she and the super PAC that is supporting her, we really don't know because a lot of the money is pretty secretive and unreported. They just immediately started saying negative and incorrect things about Marc Elrich, which is really unfortunate because in Montgomery County, we have that registration advantage, and it allows us to really get our message out there and not have to respond to ridiculous falsehoods. So she kind of took that away from us. And I liken it to Michael Jordan. So he had a great career with the Bulls, won a lot of championships, decided to retire, was on top, and then came back to the Wizards, and it was certainly after his prime and sort of tarnished his reputation a little bit. And I think if he had stayed retired, it would have been a lot better for all of us.
You're forgetting with Michael Jordan that he stopped by the White Sox.
He did. He played a little baseball, too.
He tried. He tried. And that was not far from the arena where he played basketball out there for the Bulls. But with the Florine Elrich issue, do you think the regular run-of-the-mill voters are going to take offense to someone doing what they can do legitimately and petitioning to get on the ballot?
Probably not, but I will tell you that Marc Elrich had a vision. Whether you agree with it or not, he was for BRT. He came up with it many, many years ago, and they're about to put shovels in the ground. He has thoughts and a position on development. He has thoughts and positions on education as a school teacher for 16 years. From what I can tell from Ms. Florine's campaign, it's sort of anybody but Elrich. And I don't know what her vision is. And as active Democrats, we try and, certainly we're in some sort of an echo chamber, but I try and make sure that I'm reaching out to my friends who they vote, but they don't pay attention like you and I do. And the feedback I get from them is that they don't really know who Ms. Florine is, and that they really don't know what her vision for the county is. So that's why I think ultimately she won't be successful this election.
Okay. I mean, the general impression that I've had of Marc Elrich is that he was very Tacoma Park, very left-wing, led the fight to raise the minimum wage, which was good, and that's a democratic value, I'm sure, and things of that nature. I've had him in. He's been interviewed on the show here. He doesn't strike me as any extreme left-wing person.
I think most importantly, he is incredibly honest about his positions, right? If you talk to Marc Elrich, you know where he stands. Minimum wage. He led a multi-jurisdiction effort with Prince George's County and Washington, D.C. to get that passed.
Yeah.
You know, that is quite an accomplishment for an individual council member to do. And then they came back and said, well, we're going to go from our highest level and we're going to bring it up to $15. If people are going to work 30, 40 hours a week, they're going to be able to have some sort of a living. And he was pretty clear too. And I thought this was a very fiscally responsible move. He said, if people are making enough to live, then they can be more self-sufficient. We don't have to offer them as many government services. I think he was solving a human problem and he was solving an economic problem at the same time.
One that persists.
Sure.
Do you take any the Democratic Central Committee, do you take any positions on various issues, like housing in Montgomery County? Do you do position papers or talking points with regard to any particular issue that's before the council?
So, just like every other part of life, everyone has their role and everyone has their responsibility. We feel our role is electing Democrats who make these issues and positions into reality. So, if there are ballot questions, for example, in 2012, marriage equality and the DREAM Act,
Right.
We were very involved in
Both of those.
getting those passed.
I just don't understand the invisibility of the Democratic Central Committee. I mean, there's 24 members. I don't know who they are from my legislative district.
Well, you know one.
Are you from 17?
I'm from 20,
Oh,
but I'm
20.
at large, so I
Yeah,
represent
right,
your district too.
right. So I just don't know.
So let's get back to sports analogies. The best games are the ones where the referees are invisible.
Right. Agreed.
So it is our job to promote and elect and support the elected officials, the Democrats that we work for. So every single representative to Annapolis, to Rockville, and to the federal government, with the exception of the governor's race, which hopefully we're going to flip, is a Democrat. So we just feel it's our job to make sure that they have everything they need to do their jobs.
Understood. That clarifies it. But the governor's race right now seems like it's going to be a Hogan runaway from what the most recent polls are. We've had Ben Jealous in, very nice person, very solid Democratic ideas, but I think the sounding board here is that he's a little bit too liberal or progressive for Maryland, statewide.
So I'd say the only reason we think Larry Hogan is going to run away with this race is from polling data, right? We've seen all these polls that says he's going to win. The thing about polls is you have to accurately predict who's going to show up and then ask them. So I think Mr. Jealous's strategy is to appeal to his issues, appeal to Democrats that didn't feel they had a reason to come out and vote in 2014. And I think he is doing that very successfully. He has, at all the events that I'm going to, people are devoting a lot of time to volunteer from him. Our campaign offices are consistently packed. just like you said, he's a great person. He has a personality that you get drawn to, and I think that when people go out and they're voting for Brian Frosch, and they're voting for David Trone, and they're voting for Jamie Raskin, and they're voting for Peter Francho, and they're voting for John Sarbanes, I don't see people voting for those guys and skipping over Ben Jealous too and saying Larry Hogan is just like these others, so I'm going to vote for him. I think there are going to be some surprises the night of November 6th.
I hope so. One of your former colleagues, probably not in your time on the Central Committee, is the Ben Jealous's running mate, Susie Turnbull. Long time she served as on the Central Committee, an officer in the State Central Committee.
And chair of the Maryland Democratic Party for a time.
Chair of the party for a time.
And on the Democratic National Committee.
Is she drawing the enthusiasm out of Montgomery County? That appointment to run as lieutenant governor was strategically meant to happen.
Definitely. Susie has a million positive attributes. So the day she got on the campaign, it was like you're adding another campaign manager. She has a huge network throughout the state. Last I checked, she's put over 19,000 miles on her car, traveling throughout the state and meeting people. She is a great person to know. She is fiercely loyal. She's tough, but she is kind at the same time. I think she was an incredible addition. I don't think Ben Jealous could have done any better.
Wonderful. Scott, can you tell our viewers as we wrap up here, how they can become more involved as volunteers or what have you, especially with this poll coverage coming up and all the rest? How do they reach the Democratic Central Committee?
Absolutely. So I want to take two time periods, right? We've got the next few days leading up to Election Day, and November 6th, it'll be all over. But why we're around as a Central Committee is for November 7th and beyond to get ready for the next election. So if people want to go to our website, which is www.mcdcc.org, they can sign up for our newsletter, and we'll contact them regularly, but not too regularly to jam up their inbox with opportunities to get involved. They can call our office at 301-946-1000, and we can take their information and get them signed up to volunteer.
And participate, yeah.
And we're happy to have as many people as they want, and we have a variety of different ways to volunteer. If people want to knock on doors, make phone calls, if they want to do work in the office, we've got everything for everybody.
Wonderful. Scott Goldberg, thank you very much. Mr. Goldberg serves as the chair of the Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee. I'm Pat Smith. You're watching Inside Out. We are here on Channel 16 at 7:30, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Have a good evening.